Hey, what's up? This is Joe. I'm still in Del Rio, Texas, resting up after a shoulder injury. Split the rear deltoid muscle, so no long distance riding for a little while. So I've just been trying to rest and recuperate. This is a story I've been wanting to tell for quite a while. Basically, I hit the road full time in April of 2019, and that winter I took my first trip down to Mexico and ultimately into Guatemala and Belize on a Ninja 300. Usually when I tell people that I did this, they look at me like I'm completely insane, and that might be the case. I'm not sure, but I absolutely was having a blast. You know, as I continued to get south into the jungle, I bought a machete and made a sheath for it, put it on the back of my bike. Didn't have 2 pennies to rub together, so all of my accommodations were in the jungle. With the machete, that really helped to basically clear out a campsite anywhere I wanted. I hope you find this story interesting. As I say, I still look back at it with a lot of fond memories, and just what a cool experience it was. And hopefully it'll go to show you that you don't necessarily have to have the perfect bike to be able to take an exciting and fun motorcycle trip to somewhere really exotic. So unfortunately, I wasn't doing any video at this time. The YouTube thing was still a ways off. Nevertheless, I've managed to pull together some good photos. So I'm gonna sort of do some voiceover narration over top of that and kind of explain what's going on. It's kind of with a heavy heart that I'm not going to Mexico this year. Instead, I've opted to make it to my mom's wedding in Virginia in about a month or so. And after that, I'll be flying to Vietnam for a couple of months. So my attention now has shifted from learning Spanish to learning Vietnamese. Stay tuned as far as that goes. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy this video of riding to Central America on a Ninja 300. I'd been kicking around the US on my Ninja 300 for many months, and with winter coming on fast, it was time to head south. I'd always dreamed of traveling to faraway, exotic places ever since I was a kid, and now it finally seemed possible. For weeks, I camped in Houston, Texas, freezing cold and waiting for my buddy Scooter Champ Scotty to show up. He knew Mexico better than most, and I was depending on his expertise and Spanish skills to get my foot in the door. We met at Brian's compound outside of Houston, and he put the finishing touch on the naked sport bike. A set of radiator mounts from a Dodge truck, which became my floorboards. We began slowly moving south through Rockport and to the border, where we met up with Raul, a retired Army veteran with dual citizenship, who offered to show us around Monterrey, one of the largest cities in Mexico. When we got to the city, the braking and acceleration capabilities of my bike were tested to extremes I never even imagined. We weaved as a group through impossibly crowded, fast-moving city streets. I had no idea what a motorcycle was capable of until now. It was here I got my first introduction to authentic Mexican cuisine. A baked potato stuffed with pork al pastor and carne asada. It was and still is one of the finest culinary experiences of my entire life. Mexican street food is truly a revelation for the newcomer. After ordering a mess of vampiros and gringas, Raul showed us around the city. Serra de las Mitras is the mountain of the witches, where strange female voices are said to be heard at night. On the other end of town is an enormous park where we hung out in the 90-degree heat, taking in a spectacular view of Monterrey and later attending a Mexican circus show. Scotty and I were on our own as we traveled deep into the state of Tamaulipas. My feeling at this time was as though I'd stepped into another world. Everywhere we went felt like a scene straight out of a Western movie, as if at any moment anything could happen. It was wild and free, and I loved it. The wind was extremely brutal that day, so we took refuge for the night behind an abandoned blockhouse. The next morning we rode through the port city of Tampico when Scotty suggested we stop at a stranger's house and ask to camp in their yard. They were extremely reluctant at first, but eventually said yes. Later, as we were turning in, a kid came out and invited us inside for dinner. It was his mom's birthday and all the family was there. I don't know what I expected before I came to this country, but to see this lovely lady opening her presents in front of the family nearly filled me with tears. I suddenly realized that in spite of our differences, we were all pretty much in the same boat. It was a happy moment. We got a slow start the next morning and rode into the state of Veracruz and to a town that Scotty knew, Papantla. There we found a maze of street markets with vendors selling everything imaginable. We camped in what appeared to be an old rock quarry in the middle of nowhere and headed to Scotty's friend's house in Santana, located a stone's throw from the beach. I thought to myself that I had never seen such an exotic and beautiful home. Half of it was completely open to the world, with a number of exotic trees and plants growing literally inside the house. I never dreamed that people could live this way. They seem to have such a close relationship with the outdoors. Again, my mind was blown. It's hard for me to remember how long we stayed at Felipe's house, but I had a persistent feeling of déjà vu. Almost as if I'd been here before, perhaps for an entire lifetime. Felipe sent me out with a special tool for gathering coconuts, and pretty soon we had ourselves a banquet. The days and weeks fell like grains of sand in an hourglass. Before long, Christmas arrived. The family gathered for a feast of Flintstones-like venison ribs, pasta, turkey, and many delicious things. Laura's husband Arturo was an avid hunter and had procured much of the meat from the jungle nearby. His son came running up to show me an 8-foot-long tanned boa constrictor hide which his father had killed the year before. The festivities continued as Felipe's indigenous friends from the mountains came over. They spoke in a mixture of Spanish and Nahuatl and smiled often. They appeared to me some of the most beautiful people I had ever seen. At this point, my command of the language was extremely limited, and outside of this insulated environment, I was completely freaked out to the point that even venturing into town solo required some serious self-motivation. Nevertheless, I was chomping at the bit to get out and explore the mountains west of town. My travel partner wouldn't budge and suggested that if I want to go, I should just do it and get it over with. I picked the curviest line I could find, took a deep breath, and twisted the throttle. Following a succession of gnarly dirt roads, I stopped for fresh fish steamed in banana leaf and made some sick elevation gains to Chicanquiaco. There I had tacos de cabeza and squeezed the bike into the doorway to a soccer stadium. I fell asleep to a chorus of 8 or so dogs, each with a distinctive bark, apparently aware of my position. When I'd left Felipe's place, I really had no idea where to go, only that I wanted to explore. Again seeking out the curviest road on the map, I headed toward the Pico de Orizaba, a volcano which at 18,500 feet was the highest point in all of Mexico. Veracruz is famous the world over for its coffee plantations. On one such of these, I began looking for a place to make camp. After hours of riding through these mountains, I found a halfway decent spot and set up. When I woke at dawn, I picked an ambitious gray line on the map, which I assumed would give me a good view of the mountain. What followed was a 40-mile hair-raising ride up one of the steepest and narrowest 2-lane roads I've ever encountered. I dodged potholes and herds of sheep as I continued climbing, reaching isolated mountain towns which see few if any gringos. Upon negotiating a dense pine forest, I dropped my bike twice and slept in the shadow of the enormous active volcano. The next day I decided to go to Guatemala. Since Scotty was going to be in the easternmost part of Mexico, I figured we'd meet up again at some point. I was becoming more and more comfortable on my own with every passing hour. Along the way, I spotted this enormous, intricate concrete house which had never been finished. I asked the lady next door who was washing clothes if I could stay here, and she said, okay. Later, the husband came by, a round Mexican man with a straw hat, and let me know that if I wanted to bring any women back to this spot, that would be just fine. I shook his hand and said, gracias. Before I could get anywhere, I was treated to a bowl of spicy chicken soup on the house. I thought to myself, by God, I love Mexico, and headed into the jungles of Tabasco. On New Year's Day, I rode around looking for a place to eat, but everything was closed. Finally, I saw some people setting up tables, so I pulled up and asked what was for breakfast. They just laughed and handed me a chair. This was not a restaurant, but an intimate family gathering I just walked into. I was given a large bowl of arroz con pollo, complete with internal organs, as well as the incomparable mole poblano. Afterward, I tried to pay the señora, but she wasn't having none of it, instead just laughing and cracking a sarcastic joke, which the people of Tabasco are famous for. In Tenosique, I bought a machete for $3 and constructed a crude cardboard and duct tape sheath. I thought it might come in handy. I received a warm welcome to Guatemala in El Ceibo and ventured east toward what I took to be some kind of a Mayan ruin called El Sots. As usual, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Hey, Joe here. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of the ride to Guatemala and Belize. Just a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. And as usual, I've included 2 options in the drop box below for anybody that might want to contribute to this project. Your contributions are very much appreciated. Otherwise, thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you in part 2.